Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Braca Brook Green the 15th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of The Dragons by Douglas Niles. I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members and invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the link in the description below. You can even pick up DragonLance gaming materials using my affiliate links. Now, this is my perspective only. If you have different thoughts, if you disagree, that's okay. Leave your thoughts in chat. We can have an open adult conversation about our differences. Imagine that in our world. All right. These reviews are different because I don't have time to sit down and read the actual physical book. I've been doing the audiobooks as I'm going back and forth to work, and my new job I just don't have time during the week at all. And clearly this is late, 2 hours late. And my schedule is completely out of whack lately. I apologize about that. This is 100% on me. I'm doing my best to try to maintain some semblance of regular content on this channel, and it's difficult sometimes. Today is a really, really busy day for me, so that's why I don't really have any good excuses. I'm the one that scheduled it, so it's my fault. But I apologize for being late. In any case, we're here. Let's talk about the dragons. So ultimately, this is a bit of a sequel to the Aurora's Eggs from the Dragons at War trilogy that I already reviewed on this channel. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure I reviewed it. In any case, it's about the first Dragon War, second Dragon War, third Dragon War, and fourth Dragon War, the War of the Lance. Seriously, this covers the entire scope of all of the wars except for the All Dragons War, which I think Aurora's Eggs touched on in some measure. But you have to stop and think, one book, why are you covering 4 Dragon Wars? Is that not way too much to be covering in one book? And the answer is, yeah, it is way too much, because what you have to do in that case is not focus on any individual war and the minutia about that war, and instead do broad overarching story beats that you get more detail from the game books that were released after this novel than you do ever from this novel itself. And it's very frustrating for someone who wants to read about the Dragon Wars. It's just not enough time is devoted to it, to each one of them. Thanks, Corey. I appreciate that, man. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. So ultimately, rather than talking about the story, because I have videos, 10-minute videos about each Dragon War, which I would argue goes into as much depth as this novel does, and I'm just doing broad strokes as well, which is, kind of shitty, let's be honest. If what I'm doing is giving you as much information as this entire novel does, then they clearly are trying to stuff too much information into one novel. The downside to the whole thing is, this is the downside. It's well written. Douglas Niles is a good author. He knows the content. I mean, most of this he's making up because it was never written before. So this is the first time you're ever getting any information about those Dragon Wars. So, all of the extrapolation that's done on those different wars is done after this. And I think also by him, point in fact. Mainly from the 5th Age source book, The Wings of Fury, if anyone's interested. That gives you a ton of information. And then, of course, Margaret Weis Productions, or what was the other press that they changed it to later on? But in any case, Margaret Weis ended up having other writers produce Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition content, which really dug into detail much more than this novel ever did, if memory serves. So we're never going to get all the details we want when you have 4 Dragon Wars covered in one book. It's just not a reality. And so when you do sort of parse it into each Dragon War, you're focusing instead on the dragons' personalities and their interactions. And that's, of course, the novel's called The Dragons, and that's the point of all of this. It's not supposed to be a narrative about the wars as much as it is a narrative about the dragons and their personalities, how they engage with each other in both the good and the bad side, the chromatic and metallic sides. And then just the history of them on Krynn, which is interesting in and of itself. I'm not going to pretend that it's not. I love Dragonlance, and so dragons is the first part of that. I find it interesting hearing how, especially when we get later on with like Silvara, for example, or even before that, Hart dealing in the 3rd Dragon War with Huma, how frustrating it was for her hatchmates, her hatchling mates, her brothers, uh, to witness her falling in love with a human, and how it was presented as a very silver dragon specific action that none of the other dragons really had ever or could ever consider it. I don't know if it's because the silver dragons spent more time in human form, or maybe they're just more emotionally connected to the other mortal races of Krynn. But for whatever reason, we see it more in the silver dragons than the other dragons. And all the other dragons are like, well, maybe love isn't just a human or a mortal expression. Maybe it's something that we should be open to within our own species. And broad, brushstroke atom thoughts on that topic are like, I think everyone could do a lot better in their lives if they focused a little bit more on love of the people they choose to love than anything else. And it just sort of takes me back to that song. And I think originally it was, maybe it was Elton John originally, that All You Need Is Love song, but it was redone in Moulin Rouge, really beautifully sung by Ewan McGregor, actually. Beautiful song. And I mean, that was a mashup version of it. But in any case, the point is, All You Need Is Love is sort of theme at the very tail end of this book from the dragon's perspective. And I think it correlates just with human nature and the desire of connection with other human beings, and how when we have that absence of connection, then that's where we sort of start developing aberrant behaviors and thoughts. And I don't know, it's an interesting concept to me. Anyway, that's what I took away from the very end of it. So at the top of this conversation, I was saying that you couldn't focus on all of the great little moments that I wanted to learn about, because I didn't actually have any clue about what scope this covered when I first picked it up. And so when it started going to the first Dragon War, I was like, this is great, because we're going to learn about the 3 elven sorcerers who, at this point in time on Krynn, after the All Dragons War, magic was removed from Krynn, even from dragons. The wild sorcery that we find in the 5th Age, that was tamped down after the All Dragons War. And the gods just did not allow any mortals to have any magic of any kind, and even other magical races couldn't use magic. And so it wasn't until these 3 sorcerers that came out of the Sylvanesti, early burgeoning Sylvanesti nation, that they decided to go with a dragon, I think it was Aurora or something like that, to go up to the gods and ask them, to the Lost Citadel, and ask them, no, it wasn't even the Lost Citadel at that point, just to ask the gods for help, because the evil metallic dragons were literally decimating the elven people, like completely overrunning them, and there was no way that they could fight back and successfully live. And so they went up and they got these dragon stones, and it was only because of the dragon stones that they were able to win the war. So that is what I think. When I think of the first Dragon War, I think of the dragon stones. How did they get them? What, were they precursors to the dragon orbs? What was the idea about how they were created? How did the gods deal with the mortals' request, and why did they choose this form? All of these sort of minutiae of questions that would give us some insight into not only the divinity of Krynn, but also potentially the concepts of magic and what it means to hand over magic to mortals, and what are the repercussions of that, because it is going to, come back out in waves. And so Aurora went to the gods in order to find magic. She got magic. I think it was Aurora. I'm going off memory here. And the 3 elven sorcerers came back with the dragon stones. And so, again, my focus is on the dragon stones, because that's what won the first Dragon War, right? But even when it's talking about stealing the dragon's souls and their essences with the dragon stones, it doesn't really give you detail about it. And if that's the sole purpose of what won the war, I want more information about that, Like, give me the deets. Hey, Giff, how you doing, man? Thanks for tuning in. So I really wanted to see, or read, or hear in this case, more about the Dragonstones, how they stole souls, how they were created, and why they were granted, and were there any gods that dissented, and how that weird dichotomy went in the heavens, what it was like for the mortal races, even long-living elves, to enter the realm of the gods. What was that experience like? There's just so much room for really rich storytelling that was wholly absent from this. And instead, it just focused on the title of the book, The Dragons, which I get, but I want more. And so it quick cuts to the end of the first Dragon War, doesn't really go into much detail, and then it starts up with the second Dragon War. And the second Dragon War, the whole big to do about it was that the 3 elven sorcerers that got the dragon stones, they now know wild magic. And they can actually perform magic for the first time as mortals, and no one else had that power. That's a big deal. So not only did we not touch on the gods' creation of the dragon stones and the handing them over to the mortal races, now we're dealing with these incredibly powerful sorcerers who have to unleash this incredible amount of wild magic to save themselves from this second Dragon War. And instead of going into any of it, it just sort of brush strokes around the edges where these 3 mages come up to Sylvanos and they're like, hey, so like we're going to die. But there's this like Hail Mary chance of a spell we can cast, and it's probably going to mess everyone up, but it's the only chance we have of surviving at all. So it's going to hurt everyone, us and them, but it'll stop them. But it's really the only thing we can do, or we just face destruction. And so Sylvanos was like, do it. And that's the extent of the information we get. We don't, sorry, my screen just went blank. We don't get information about what the spell was like or the repercussions of the spell. Only that I think it was Crematia or it was Deathfire. Went back and hid after the destruction, like destroyed all of their dragons, and that's it. And that's the second Dragon War. So the first Dragon War was super disappointing because it didn't go into the information. The second Dragon War was super disappointing because it didn't really go into the information. So the third Dragon War, we get to it, right? And instead of going into the details about how Huma got the Dragonlance and brought it back and what was the relationship like between Hart and Huma and, you know, how a dragon could fall in love with a human at all, like what are those emotions that she's going through that would make her like him? And like there's so much, again, rich storytelling, which of course Richard A. Knack would extrapolate on, and now in the future we're going to be getting a whole trilogy based on Huma and Magius, and it's got to talk about Hart at some point. Instead of going into all that information, it glosses over it, and it's just talking about how the dragons are frustrated that Hart likes a human, and how he wants to rip Huma apart because he's jealous. It's just like, what the hell, man? I just don't understand why it can't. And then I just wanted more. You know, I wanted detail, and they just did not give it. And so that was really frustrating because, again, with so many versions of how Huma achieved the Dragonlance, how he was given the Dragonlance, we have the poems from the first novel, we have the suggestions of it in the Tales of Lance box set and the DLA Dragonlance Adventures, and then we have Richard A. Knack's Legend of Huma, which is different, completely different. And then we have the Destinies trilogy, which goes in this same story in a very different way. And like we have all these different tales. Just give us your version, Douglas Niles. I would love to hear it because he is one of those contributors to Dragonlance who contributed arguably more than even Tracy Hickman ever did. When you look at who wrote modules and stuff and novels, like Douglas Niles is up there amongst the pantheon who did the most, and he's not giving us like hardly anything. I'm just like, if anyone can do it, you could totally do it, man. You could totally get it. We are getting Huma and Magius trilogy starting next year. The first book is coming out, and it's about Magius and Huma's youth or coming of age story or something like that. But it's focusing on Magius, the first one, I think. So I don't know. They should definitely have done 4 books, Corey. I 100% agree, because they could have gone into some really, really rich, great detail. In any case, that was the third Dragon War. It just started, and then it stopped, and then we finally get to the fourth Dragon War. And this is even more glossed over, because, again, the whole thing about the fourth Dragon War is the Heroes of the Lance, and they don't want to retell that in a book called The Dragons. So it's focusing on the dragons that had fled after the third Dragon War to live in the Dragon Isles. and about the theft of their eggs, which again was wildly disappointing. They literally just woke up one day and they were gone. There was no narrative about the dragons sneaking in with the Bakali and how they had to, like they could have done like a heist story. It didn't even have to be long. Just give us like 400 words on a heist of the eggs. And instead, the dragon who was like assigned to watch over them went to sleep, woke up, and they were gone. The end. And then it had the Matafleur. Is it Matafleur? The dragon, it was Harkeel. Harkeel came in and like approached them alone. It was the red dragon that helped make the Draconians. And he was like, I speak for Takesis, and you all can't join this dragon war. She's coming and she's going to rule the land. If you ever want to see your eggs again, stay out of it. I need you all to stand here and swear an oath to me. And so they went and got all the good dragons, and they all came one at a time and swore an oath. Silvara was nowhere to be found, so that's how she was able to break the oath, because she never gave the oath. And like, they're, the little, I don't know. I was just frustrated because the purpose of all, like the key points of all of the wars were completely glossed over and weren't extrapolated on at all. And it was just about dragons talking smack to each other and how their relationships ebbed and flowed. And the thing is, I enjoyed the book. It was good. It's just, it wasn't good enough. It didn't pay off what it suggested, like when you get in like a monologue at the beginning of a movie and you're like, that sounds great, that should be the movie, and instead you get like what happened after the monologue. You're just like, not as exciting. And so that was the 4th Dragon War, and that was kind of it. Like, it just went for the 4 Dragon Wars, and here's the worst part. I did the audiobook, right? And I listened to the audiobook. The woman who is narrating the audiobook, I was going at 1.5 speed. And her way of speaking was something like this. I'm going to read my intro in the pattern that she was reading the book. Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. Who reads like that? So and that was at 1.5 speed. If it was at 1 speed, it would have been like, welcome to another DragonLance Saga review. Like, super awkward and weird sounding. Who reads a story like that? No one. It's the most absurd. And why do you have that as the audiobook reader? It would, like, AI would have been better. Because at least then you would have had an excuse for it to sound off and strange. Oh, well, that's clearly a robot. That's a computer talking. That's not a human. This is a human woman. Like, what? That sounds weird. This is a human woman, as opposed to an elven woman reading it. William Shatner. Yeah, it was kind of like that. It was just strange. It was like the pattern of speech. And then, of course, I know Dragonlance, and I'm no one to be really talking about this, but I'm going to anyway. Pronunciations. I know a lot of you hate the way I pronounce words in Dragonlance. It's life. Get used to failure and get used to not liking what I do. That's life. But now I'm feeling it. And I'm feeling what you're feeling. You're like, oh, Adam sucks at pronouncing everything in Dragonlance. Now I'm like, this woman sucks at pronouncing everything in Dragon, because it's all like off. And not just off as in that's not how I say it. Off as in I've never heard anyone say it like that. So she's like doing her own thing on top of everything else. And she'll say Sylvanos is like Sylvanos, and then Sylvinos. And then she says Sylvanos like 3 different ways in the same novel. Like, does she not remember saying the word before? And it's almost like she doesn't understand English, but she can read English words. And so she's just reading the words without any understanding of what she's saying, which actually would make perfect sense of why it sounds so odd, because the patterns that she's speaking in are so absurd and strange. I don't know. It was very odd. It was the worst part about the novel. It was very, very hard to focus while I'm driving to work to hear the story when she is like talking like a maniac the whole time. So what are you going to do? All right, so let's see what you guys have to say. Yeah, sorry, Chris, about not doing this on time again. I just, too much stuff going on. All right, so like Marvel, they have a lot of trouble keeping the timeline straight. Second Dragon War was labeled second and third because it lasted 42 years. We're getting a Huma trilogy. Yes. Let's see. Sounds like they should have made a 4-book series. Definitely. Huma was the first book you read for fun. You'd love to get a trilogy. Hey, Painda, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I mean, we have a duology of the Huma Dragonbane with Richard A. Knack. We have, Legend of Huma and Kaz the Minotaur. And then there's like 2 or 3 Kaz stories. And then there's, in this same Lost History series, the Kaz story about the Minotaurs, the Minotaur Kingdom, about him setting up the Kazalati culture in the Minotaur Isles, which is pretty good. It was a pretty good book. So let's see. It was your first Dragonlance book ever. You read Huma in 3rd grade. 3rd grade, really? Wow. It's influenced your life more than any other book. I'm not sure I was reading novels in 3rd grade. Good for you, man. Let's see. You want to be your friend. Anyone who found the book early is a brother. Hell yeah. Good stuff. Hey, Jason, how you doing, man? All right. So that's what these reviews are. I mean, I'm not doing a pre-written anything as I'm reading it because I don't have time to take notes or anything. I'm just absorbing the book, and then after, when I have time, I'm going to come and give you guys reviews. I know it's not as satisfying, or at least for me, it's not as satisfying to do it this way than the other way that I did it previously. But I just don't have time. So what are you going to do? I'm going to still be reading the books, and I might as well bring you my thoughts since it's a Dragonlance channel, right? So why not? Next, the next books I'm going to be going into are the Warriors trilogy. I do already own like half of them in physical book, but again, because I don't have time to read physical books, I'm going to be doing audiobooks on my way to and from work. So expect these same types of reviews for those, though I have read most of them already, so it should, my memory should be jogged a little bit more, and I'll have more detail and insight. Hopefully, fingers crossed, on those. I'm really looking forward to them because I haven't read them all, and there's somewhat that I really kind of want to get into, like Theros Ironfeld and Marquest Carthon, Marquesta Carthon. I really want to get into those two specifically, and then of course start getting into the Knights books because those are beginning with the Warriors trilogy. So I'm really looking forward to that. I love Knights of Selenia. All right, so that is all I've got for this review. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That is The Dragons by Douglas Niles. It's definitely worth a read. It's a lot to take in because, again, it's 4 different Dragon Wars, and they don't really go in the detail that you want them to, but you can't if you're going to stuff that much history into one volume. It is interesting understanding the thought processes and experiences of the dragons themselves, though you'll get just as much insight if you visit the Dragonlance 5th Age Wings of Fury supplement or the Dragons of Krynn 3.5 edition Margaret Weiss Productions book, game supplement. Those 2 books will give you more insight than this novel did about all 3 Dragon Wars, because it adds in any other, tertiary information to help really flesh it out. Or you could just watch the 4 videos that I've produced on this channel about all 5 videos, I should say, because I did one about the All Dragons War, which is really the first Dragon War. So, yeah, do yourselves a favor. Check it out if you want to learn a little bit more about dragons. It's still a good read. The audiobook's super freaky weird. So if you want a super freaky weird adventure, maybe check that out as well. All right. What did you think of the scope of the books? Would you prefer a more focused story? And finally, do you feel like you had enough time with the different dragons to truly care about the characters? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I apologize again for being late. I hope you'll join in the celebration coming. Thank you all for watching. This has been Adam for Dragonlance Saga. And until next time, Slanjavar.